Welcome back on Sunday night here to the Astro Imaging channel. I'm so glad you all made it back for tonight because we got one of the best here tonight. Adam Block is joining us, and he's going to be telling us about ways to save time and avoid trouble on lots of little things that you do in PixInsight. And I'll introduce them more formally later. But for now, I want to present my screen and some other things and tell you about some things that are going on. I've split my screen here a little bit so that you can see not only the some of the objects that we've gotten for our Orion Time project. If you go to the website and you go to Orion Time, let me get a little bit more here. Go to Orion Time, you'll see that you can come here and the rules are very simple. Take a picture of anything in Orion, any object in Orion. You can take a picture of Orion as a whole. It can be a movie or a still. It's got to be from this apparition because we don't have any other rules, and that sounded like a good rule to make. And get it in by February 7th, or pretty close to February 7th, because during our hiatus, because we're a big production now, we're going to have a hiatus. On February 7th, we aren't going to have an Astro Imaging channel show because we're going to watch the Super Bowl. But right about in there sometime, I'll be fixing all the slides together, more formal than I've got here. This is just a rough draft showing you that a lot of people have contributed images to our project already. And I want you to contribute your images also. What you do is you click here to submit the file, and when you do that, it goes to your email system, and you just send us a copy of your file. But JPEG is fine. 1080 pixels on one side. Now that's a requirement. It's not a real hard, fast requirement if you don't have 1080. But if we don't have something like that, we probably don't have enough size to really get you good definition in the slideshow. So try to make it 1080, submit a JPEG, just click there and do it. Also at this time, every show, I go to the calendar. And as always, well, we've done a really good job scheduling up. So we've got a lot of cool things coming up. And I think you'll enjoy hanging around with us for the next few weeks. But the big thing, the hardest thing we have to do on the Astro Imaging channel from one Sunday to the next is to find presenters to show their stuff. We work real hard at it. We have to contact these people, and we're glad that we occasionally do get volunteers to sign up. They just go over to, on the main website, they go over to contact, and they just give us their first and last name, their email, and they say, hey, I want to do a show about such and so because I've been working on this for a while. And we'll check you out and find out what you do and talk to you a little bit. And in general, schedule you up. All you got to do is pick a Sunday and you be part of the Astro Imaging show. On YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, whoops, I've got to renew here. We're going to have Adam. Now, Adam has pursued perfecting astro imaging for more than 30 years as a professional astronomer. He's an astrophotographer. He's an imaging liaison to NASA, universities, and various science endeavors. His work has been widely recognized as among the best in the world. His images have earned an astonishing 95 APODs, and of course, more than that by now, probably. Adam's one of only a dozen people to receive the AIC Hubble Award, the Advanced Imaging Conference Hubble Award for astroimaging. It recognizes the significant and sustained contributions to the astrophotography community. He's highly sought after as a public speaker on the cosmos and imaging in general. Adam's second love is teaching, and that's obvious from anybody who's ever looked at his teaching tutorials or any of the programs he does for us, and he's done half a dozen probably for us. His current mission is courseware and streaming episodes that help get the most of images by teaching both the techniques and the underlying principles of PixInsight and image processing. Adam Block Studios, PixInsight TV, PixTV, have evolved over the years to be superb resources for deep learning of PixInsight. Adam's unique approach moves you away from that recipes that often don't quite work when it comes to what you're actually doing at the image processing. Instead, he shares the tools and knowledge to go beyond the lessons. He tries to lead to the mastery of PixInsight and to the art of astrophotography. Adam, that's an introduction to you. So why don't you take over and take us away, okay?
I really appreciate that introduction, Alex. That was very nicely said. I'm really happy to be here because I have something that I'd like to announce tonight. The Astro Imaging Channel is the first that I've had a chance to say this, so I'm really excited to actually say something. Where I'd like to begin, of course, is I need to present my screen. Let's do that. And I don't think that I've done this in the past, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a few moments to explain, because it'll allow me to introduce the thing I want to say. But let me just show you my website and just get an overview of what I do. And it's grown recently, and so many people may not see the full constellation of stuff that I'm working on here. So Adam Block Studios is a collection of video tutorials. Obviously, today I'm mostly concentrated on PixInsight, but there's a legacy of other tutorials that I've done in the past in other software programs. But PixInsight is the thing. And I have a couple of different things going on. I have the main library of content, and I call them two separate words here. I call them fundamentals and horizons. Fundamentals, though, is really the thing that I'm most proud of. And it contains, if you can believe this, it contains over like 100, if you add up these numbers, it's like 175 or more videos on PixInsight just in this collection. Horizons has even more. That's an awful lot of work. That's many, many hours of material. It's enough that it takes some time to go through it. And that's because I'm not just, as you mentioned, talking about the steps. I'm also literally explaining the concepts, the why that you would want to do something, or why a number is the way it is, why you shouldn't believe all the numbers that you see. Defaults are an illusion. That, for example, is something that I think is an important concept. So that's what you'll find here. But I've added something, and this is the thing that I'm most excited about. I've added this new thing called Fast Track Training, which is a new development for me. The other new development is that there's this thing that I do live. If people have not seen me give a presentation before like this, this is kind of like a version of what I call Pix TV. It'll be just on your channel instead of my channel. But Pix TV is a new thing for me as well, where I'll do an hour-long presentation, something about PixInsight, and it's very easy to watch, and people can, if they're not going to take advantage of it live, they can get any of the episodes. So this is something I've just recently started, but I plan on doing this indefinitely until I exhaust all the things I can possibly say. So here's the before, watching PixInsight TV, and then you can see the after. That's the good thing. But again, what I wanted to announce is that first thing, which is Fast Track Training. One of the things that I was working on is, to produce a short course that anyone starting out in PixInsight who needs basically a straightforward workflow and steps to follow, that's what this is. It took me a while because I needed to really think about the best way to do this, especially because there are so many options that are available out there right now. For a lot of people starting out in image processing, PixInsight seems like an alien planet. It has a blank starting screen, and it's all this complex terminology, lots of processes, but not really a clear workflow. Starting with a recipe is kind of what you assume you need to do in order to understand PixInsight. Just show me the steps, man. But often happens is people immediately start hitting roadblocks. The result doesn't look right. Additional processing makes whatever they have on the screen look worse. And ultimately, there isn't really a good idea of what the problem is and what you need to do next. The funny thing is that even when you press a button, and this applies to any software, and you get a result, that doesn't mean just because you got a result, that it's the best result, it's the most optimal result. So in working with many imagers in PixInsight, especially that are new to PixInsight, and in participating on online forums and so on, I just realized that the key that people are missing to get the absolute best out of their images isn't the understanding of PixInsight itself. That's part of it, but it's also an understanding of the data and how it relates to the software. So unlike other tutorials here in Fast Track and in general, I highlight elements of things like, dark frames, light frames, hot pixels, fits, headers, many other things, but I do it in a way that gives people tools that they can use on any data set, most especially their own. So this just isn't about understanding image processing. This is a course that sets out an approach to minimize frustration for any image processor and prevent them from falling into some of the most common traps. If you look at the screen at what these sections are, you're not going to be surprised by what you see. I mean, all of these sections are exactly what you would expect. You got to look at the images, you've got to debater them, you run them through WBPP, align them, combine them, and so on. There's nothing unique about that. What is unique is the way in which I present the information, because I'm going to show people who go through this course a different way to look at their data and how that relates to PixInsight while you do these steps. And that's the important part. So Fast Track it's a foundation course that is actually appropriate for any level of image processing, and it gives you this workflow that you can follow easily. It's a comprehensive workflow that includes a better understanding of PixInsight and that relationship to the data. So you can take the lessons learned beyond this 3-hour short course and apply to your own imagery. You can feel more confident and comfortable when processing. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is I'm going to walk through some of the examples to show what I'm talking about that relates to this. And it relates, as I say, in general to kind of my philosophy for instructional videos. So I'm going to open up PixInsight here. Now, it is my hope that everyone sees my screen. And I'm going to do the first thing. And some of these things are just the warm-up material. So bear with me as I do what I consider the warm-up. I just did it. That was it. You want to see it again? I'm going to do it again. Ready? There it is. If you double-click on the desktop, you can open up the Open Files menu. Not everyone knows that. That's actually a really nice, quick, easy thing to do. It saves you the real estate of having to go up there to the file menu. So that's number one. That actually isn't the cool thing, though. I may have done this before on the Astro Imaging channel, but let me just repeat it because I think it's so important. One of the things that often happens is you'll have a lot of files, especially today with CMOS users. They may have hundreds and hundreds of files taken maybe on different nights, or you may have users that do like what I'm showing here, RGB imaging with a mono camera, and you might have red images and green images and blue images of different kinds in different states. And you want to be able to, if they're all in the same directory, for example, select them so you can open them in different processes. Well, in Windows, which I'm going to demonstrate, and just about any other operating system, there's always a way to use wildcard characters to take advantage of, it's basically Boolean logic, the and display only the files that you're interested in seeing. So for example, here's a list of lots of RGB data. And if I only wanted to look at the green files, here's how you do it. You specify the thing that must be in the file name, and then you put asterisks around everything else that can be whatever else is in the file. So if I do star, green star, I'm going to list only those files that have the characters GREEN in the listing. And that makes it very easy now to highlight these files and open them in another process or whatever it is that I want to do. By the way, what I just did to highlight them is I did Control-A on the keyboard, that's one way, or you can use the Shift key, click on the first, click on the last with Shift, and highlight all of those files. I just need to point that out. That is a fantastic way to do things, and you'll see me do this for a very important reason a number of times here in this presentation. So that's a quick tip number 2. Use these asterisks to display what, if I want to display everything, I just do star, and that displays all characters, anything in any file name. So I get back my file listing here. Now, with that idea in mind, let me show you. Oh, you know, I wanted to show you a really good example of that. Before I leave this topic, I forget. I am going to show it to you now. Image integration. Oh, that's not even the correct directory. See, things are going terribly wrong. It so happens that this data that I showed you, the files, they were of M78, red, green, and blue data. But this is wide field imaging. One of the things you can do whenever you want to open up, as I showed a moment ago, one of these files, you just click on them and open them up. So this really is a wide field image here of M78, Bernard's loop, and all that kind of stuff. You'll see the result of it in a moment. But if you wanted to add those files, which again, I just went away from here, at some point, because this is a wide field image, sometimes people end up wanting to do drizzled data, right? And you need to update your the files that are generated when you create these drizzled files. Well, the funny thing is that if you want to highlight them to open them up in image integration, you need to distinguish between the files that you need to update, which are the XD, the whole, let's see if I can find them here. Here they are. The XDRZ files and the XIF files. So the XIF files are the actual pictures. These XDRZ files, those are the ones you need to update so that you can do your drizzle integration later. The thing is, if I just do here star red star, that shows me both, but in image integration, I just want to load the images first. So how do you do that? We do star red star dot XI, and that will only show me the images, right? So I just highlight them all and I load them here. And then to add the drizzle files, of course, I just do star red star dot XD, and now I have all of my drizzle files that I would load here, and that only took me 2 seconds to do. So I just wanted to demonstrate that's how you use this stuff for good purposes. Now, the next thing I want to show, let me show you what that image kind of looks like. This is roughly the final result of that image. And let me maybe zoom out. Oh, there you go. So you can see the image here. Try to make this a little larger. Yeah. There's M78. And as part of this, I did use a starless image here. Here's a starless image. And what I want to demonstrate, I'm just using these two images as an example, is something that I use all the time. And it's something that in my tutorials, people always ask me, Adam, how are you doing that? One of the things about PixInsight is that it doesn't have a natural way to blink images. You can blink images that are on your disk through the blink process, but there isn't a view process that easily allows you to blink images. There are a number of ways to do it, but I'm going to show you my favorite way. A lot of people do this thing where they put one image over the other and they take advantage of the transparency. I'm sorry, I think that's dumb. That's not the best way. I like this way. There are a couple of steps though. You need to make sure the two images are displayed to the same, the views are the same dimension. See, this is a rectangle and this is a square. So you would press this little, there's a little square button here, which is going to resize the image the largest it can be on your desktop. You do that to both images. That way they're both the same size. And then you pick one that you want to be at some position, wherever it is you want. By the way, another quick thing that you should know in PixInsight, you can move around an image with the sliders, or if you hold down the space bar, you can move an image around by holding down the space bar. You'll see up here the state changes for the tool here, to move tool. That's how you get to move around. So I'm going to pick some position here. And boy, I have to get these things out of the way. And then you transfer the information about your zoom and your position that's contained in this, basically in this tab here. It contains that information, this view, and you put it over here. When you put it right onto this tab, it transfers those parameters, those numbers, into this image or view. And now they're matched so that you can blink the two. Now, how do you blink them? The trick is Control Page Down. It's a really odd kind of keystroke shortcut. Who does that? But it's a good one. So Control Page Down will allow me to, by pressing that on the keyboard, blink between the two. This is a fantastic way to blink images. And then if I wanted to maybe go to a new place or with a new zoom, all I do is I just retransfer, put one image over the other, and blink away. So I think that's a very nice one, and people ask me about it all the time. That's how you do it. Right. So those are, again, this is all the warm-up act. Another one, I'm going to open up a raw M78 image here. This image is not being displayed, obviously, with a stretch that is terribly informative, because this is a linear image, and we're not seeing but only the very brightest things in here. If we want to see faint stuff, we need PixInsight to calculate, based on the histogram, based on the amount of brightnesses in the image, what will give us kind of that best representation. So the screen transfer function process does that, but you can activate it with, again, there's a tool up here in the menu bar, or just Control A. Control A will do the trick. So Control A gives me the information to see. But what I really want to do here is show that there's something a lot of people just don't know about. It is the preview mode, or the preview readout, I guess. There is a small arrow down here at the bottom bar. If you press on it and you go to readout data and then go to show readout preview, I already have it checked, so you make sure it's checked. Then when you press and hold the left mouse button on the screen, you will see, I'm going to zoom in so you can look at a star or something, but you'll see the information, especially the brightness value of whatever pixel you are on. So the K value there indicates the brightness. Now, values in PixInsight are normalized between 0 and 1, but that does give me an indication of how bright this is compared to a star, which should be considerably brighter. In fact, that's a saturated star because the value there is 1. Let's look at a non-saturated star. There, that's only half saturation at 0.42. So that gives you something interesting. If we were looking at a color image, then you would not only see the brightness of what's the overall brightness, but in this case, you'll see it of each of the channels. So we can see the red, green, and blue brightnesses, as well as what's interesting here. Do you see the alpha and delta? That's this image was plate solved at some point, and that solution is retained in the FITS header. So I get here on the screen is the right ascension and declination of every pixel, of every star, of everything in the image. That's also shown. So a very useful, powerful tool that you'll see me use. That's how you turn it on. If you didn't know how to turn it on, it's down here for readout data, and then show the readout preview. Okay, so we'll minimize this, close this. All right, one more thing in the warm-up, and then I'm going to get to the stuff that is a little bit more interesting. I'd like to show you something that I don't know that people know about. It's something that deals with masks. People use masks all the time. And I'm going to generate a simple mask here just to show. So I have an image, and let's pretend this was an image of something. We're just in pretend land for the moment. I'll show you a real image. But I'm going to make a mask. Let's pretend there's a galaxy in the middle. So I'm going to make a circular or elliptical mask here by going and using the very nice game script. So there is a repository that is hosted by, gosh, now I can't remember. It's Herbert Walters, Herbert Walters. And most of these scripts are written by Harmit Bornemann. Get all these names correct. So if you look here, you can see the actual, this here is the repository. So you can take a screenshot of that if you want. But the game script, of course, is a game changer for making masks within PixInsight. If you didn't know what it stands for, The G stands for generate, E is elliptical, M is mask. I don't know what A is, but it's basically an elliptical mask generator. So I'll start from scratch here. You just add an elliptical thing. You can move it around, you can do whatever you want, but let's say it's right here in the middle, and we add the mask. So I go, okay, I'm going to make this, you can do different kinds of masks. I'm going to make this a binary mask. Okay. And there it is. Now remember, this is my image of something that I'm going to apply this mask to. But what I wanted to indicate is a way to manipulate masks in a particular circumstance. Let's say that I had a galaxy, and I'm going to be showing you this example here in just a moment. So the galaxy is in the center. And let's say that I wanted to increase the saturation, the color saturation of the galaxy. And I also wanted to increase the color saturation of the stars, but not as quickly as the galaxy. See, that's a more subtle distinction. So in other words, it's possible to generate a mask where you can do one process, but apply it to different degrees all in one go. And that just requires a little bit of thoughtfulness. For example, what I could do with this very mask is I could do the following. All we need to do is change the color, the brightness of this mask, change the blacks and the gray values and the white values. And I'm going to use curves transformation to do it. This is the thing that I don't know that many people know this trick. If I wanted to say, do 100% of whatever adjustment I wanted for what is here in white, then I'm going to leave this white, because that means that it's going to be 100%. And the black means everything that's black, that whenever I apply this to an image, it's all going to be protected. Nothing's going to happen. But I could make it gray. There's an easy way to do that. You can use curves transformation, and all this line indicates here is input versus output. You'll see that in these fields. So if your input and output are equal, you get a nice diagonal line, which means no change. But if I want to, I can take this, now it's kind of hard to grab here. I can take this and move this here. That means that the minimum input starts at 0.5, and the output's still going to be all the way up here at 1. So if I now apply this to the image, I can't get any brighter than white. It's going to stay white. But now I've made everywhere that was black, I've made it gray. And now I have a mask that will do the job that I want it to do. Another cool thing about, and this is very specific to 0.5, to making the brightness halfway, mid-gray, is that if I want to invert the color scheme here, if I want to make blacks white and white black, I can do it and still keep my gray the same gray value, because the inverse of mid-gray is still gray, no change. The quick keystroke, so this is another time-saving thing. If you ever need to invert an image, it's Control-I. By the way, there does exist, and I didn't think to bring it, but there does exist a very nice list of all of the keystrokes. I'm only mentioning a couple that I use, but there is a much larger universe of quick keystrokes that exists for PixInsight. There's a nice chart. Here's Control-I. Oh, maybe I need to press on the screen here, Control-I. There, you can see that I'm flipping back and forth, but it doesn't change the gray value. It only changes the white. So that allows me to use this mask to operate in multiple ways. So maybe I need to protect, maybe I don't need to protect. It's a way to think about utilizing masks and manipulating them with the curves transformation by just changing thresholds of beginning points of inputs or outputs. So let me now try to do this for real. Because it's going to illustrate another quick thing that saves an awful lot of time. Here's the color image, and maybe this is what I want to change, or I want to boost the color saturation of this thing. Let me be sure that I am, oh, let me undo that. Yeah, I was making sure this was not a linear image, and it's not. This is what I got when I do the initial color combine. So let's turn off the auto screen stretch here. Yes, so this is what I had when I initially combined the image, and let's just say I wanted to increase the color saturation more of the galaxy, than of the stars. Well, let's get a star mask. So I just have stars to work with. The first thing to do, perhaps, is to make a grayscale image of this thing, because that's what I can use to generate a kind of star mask. Now, there is a star mask process, but that's not what I'm going to use. What I'm going to demonstrate is what I think is the fastest way to make a star mask, which is another process called MLT, multiscale linear transform. This is a fantastic way to make star mask. I already have it set up there, but I'll start from 0. The idea is that these layers refer to size, kind of scale sizes within this image of contiguous brightness things. So a galaxy is very large. It's a large scale thing. It has contiguous brightnesses of stuff. So it's going to be seen as something big. Stars are relatively small by comparison. So if we just make sure we have lots of scales to choose from here, I want to only have in the result after I apply this, I only want there to be stars, basically. So what layers might stars be? Well, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see the pixel dimensions here, maybe up to 16 pixels, but not beyond. It's a good place to start. So I just turn all of these off. These layers should basically correspond to stars, and all this other stuff bigger is probably the galaxy. If you apply this, that's it. You pretty much have a star mask, at least almost. Now let's zoom in and look in detail. You'll probably see there's still some galaxy stuff, but here's the important part. The galaxy stuff is not quite like a star because as it is represented here in this newly formed image, it's not as bright as many of the stars that interest us. And we can use that threshold of brightness to further make a discrimination between what is a star and what isn't. Anything that still shows up that might be really bright parts of this galaxy because there are H2 regions that are star-like, well, they are actually star-like, and maybe we don't want those parts to have, if we're going to increase the color saturation, we want those to increase more slowly than the galaxy, so that's still okay. What you do then is you can get out, this is a number of ways to do it, but I'm going to use binarize here. When you click with the binarize tool, watch what happens to the number. The number gets updated. So wherever you click becomes your threshold. So I can click on a galaxy part here, and let's say that that's my threshold. Everything beneath this number of 0.2 in terms of brightness in this image will become black, and anything above this number will just stay or become white. And you'll notice now, I have very little in the way of galaxy. Maybe some of these little blips refer to some of the H2 regions, but basically this is a star mask. So in 2 steps, MLT followed by binarize, without any computation, the computation is in 2 seconds, I have a nice star mask. That is something I like. Now you still need to, as you would normally do, manipulate the star mask. So what I might do, I actually have it open over here, is you can get morphological transformation. This will allow us to dilate. We want to grow these things, make them a little bit bigger. And I don't know, a size of 7 seems fine. So you can grow them like that. And then finally, the last little thing you typically do, not always, but it depends. You might want to soften with convolution. It's a blurring thing. We can soften the edges of stuff. If that's too much, you can do a little less here. You can lessen this, whatever you feel is good. And now I have basically a star mask. That's it. That's how you'd make a star mask. This is what I would apply to here. When you apply as a mask, you don't do like we did before. This would transfer this zoom and position and make these 2 images match, which is nice, but that's not what I want. I want to apply it as a mask, which means I put it over not on the tab, but beneath the tab in the margin. And the tab becomes brown, which means we are applying a mask. I'm not showing it though, even though it is applied. You go to the mask menu, you can show the mask, and that shows where it is. I don't find that as useful. I know where it is because I have all this stuff here. And at this point, now you can actually take advantage of what I was talking about a moment ago, where if I wanted to increase the color saturation of the galaxy, I don't necessarily have this the right color, because what I really want to do is somewhat protect the stars and not the galaxy. So I would use Control-I. Now it's becoming handy. Now I'm protecting stars and not the galaxy. The changes that I make here are instantly there. There's a connection between the mask that's being applied and anything I do here. So if I change this, it is changed here as it's being applied to this image. And then I can get out a process of something I want to do. And maybe the thing that I want to do is color saturation, looking for it here. And if I just raise the color saturation, just across the board like this, that should do an increase of color. It wasn't a major increase, but it was an increase. So here's before, here's after, maybe I do it again or something. Now I've really bumped it up. But the stars have not really increased their color much at all. And maybe we don't want that much color. But if we wanted the star color to, I'm going to back up. If you wanted the star color to increase a little bit more, instead of regenerating that mask, well, you now know the trick. What I can do is I can come to Curves, Transformation, wherever that is, here. And maybe I make them not quite as, I don't need to be 50%, but maybe I make it like this, and I apply that here. That changes the stars, right? And now as I apply my color saturation a couple of times or whatever, now I have more star color showing up in the stars, as well as you can see the blue and the orange here, yellow, as well as the color that's showing up in the galaxy. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate. Just a nice way to manipulate masks, a nice way to make a star mask, a nice way to interact with an image very quickly without having to go through too many machinations. The thing that is often complained about in PixInsight is that, masks are kind of unwieldy compared to other programs like Photoshop or something. And at some level, that's true, depending upon the complexity of the mask. But there are ways of manipulating the thresholds of things, which is what I just demonstrated, that are really simple and easy to do. So keep that in mind. Now what I'm going to do, in fact, I tell you what, I'm going to take a quick break, and let me see if there are any questions, or has everything been displaying well. I'll give a moment for someone to come on and tell me everything is okay, and then I'm going to continue.
Well, I think everything is okay, Adam. Now you have lots of people paying attention.
Okay.
And there's certain people that find it difficult to make masks. I think
Right.
most of us do find it a little difficult to make masks, but there are no questions right
Okay,
at the
that's
moment.
fine.
Everyone's paying attention.
More important than that is that it's coming across clearly on the screen, because I'm not really doing much in the way of textual stuff. Okay.
There are times, Adam, do you know how to use the magnifier?
I do, but I don't want to.
Okay. Sometimes it's hard to see the small script.
Yeah, the script, I know. I'm going to try to,
Okay.
the numbers I'm going to try to stay away from in general.
Okay.
I will be sure to speak them, even if you can't see them clearly, if I do use some numbers.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to a new screen. Now, what I'm going to show next is much more in line with what I was trying to indicate in my introduction of my new fast track, introduction to PixInsight, where there are many of these things that happen to people that if they follow these steps, they would instantly appreciate where the problem is. The thing that often happens with people is they get so far down the road in processing, and then it's a convolution of stuff, because you've done one thing, you've done another thing, you've done another thing. And oftentimes people think, well, the last thing they did was the problem, but that may or may not be true. It may be something much earlier on. So I try to catch that in a way. Here is an example. Unfortunately, I don't have, there was an even much better example. There was a gentleman who gave me a call, and he was having problems with his images, and I believe, he thought it was a flat field problem, basically. with his images, and he was trying to get rid of these gradients that were in using DBE and all this kind of stuff. But where I begin is much, much earlier. I wanted to see his initial data. I said, please show me your flat field images, show me your bias frames, show me your dark frames. He showed me a dark frame, which was kind of like this, but his was even more strange. And I said, that's not right. A dark frame in general will be fairly uniform unless there's something going on with the chip. You know, and one thing that I could have done is I could have compared to another frame, like a bias frame, which is a 0-second exposure. And if the pattern that I see in the bias is not represented in the dark, I know there's something wrong, because the dark frame is nothing more than a bias plus some extra electronic activity. Now, the funny thing is, though, and this is the part that hurts many CMOS people, is they don't use bias frames. All they do is they take dark frames. You could still compare a shorter dark to a longer dark and make sure that something's weird. That wouldn't have helped in this case, though. But I knew by looking at an image like this what was wrong. I said, you know, this doesn't look like a dark to me. This looks like light was in the image. You actually detected light. Rolling the cursor on the screen, it wasn't enough just to look at the image. Now I'm using the readout. I noticed that the values are very high. They're much higher than you would expect for a dark frame in a given image. So I thought, yeah, that's probably light. So I said, how did you take your dark frames? Oh, well, I stuck it outside my door because this was an uncooled camera. So he thought that he would take darks the next day, and he stuck his camera outside in the day and was taking darks. Now, the temperature was fine, but the problem is very few cameras are light tight. And this poses a problem. People don't know that, that can be an issue. And then they go through all the processing, and sure enough, this signal of extra light, basically infects everything going forward. So that's not good. Don't put your cameras outside. In fact, take dark frames, of course, especially if you don't know how the system or the camera or all the, the environment interacts with your system. Make sure the sun is down. Make sure the computer monitor is off. Check all of that off, and then see how things go. You can eliminate problems. Here is another one, and this one was really interesting. Let me show you. I'm going to show you first the flat field image. So this is a flat field image, and no, that's not a flat field image. That's the dark flat. This is the dark raw. I will get there. Flat raw, there it is. So here's a flat field image that this gentleman took, and it looks perfectly fine. The value looks perfectly fine. It's got 0.5, 0.6, whatever for these values. I know that the chip is detecting light. It doesn't appear that there's anything wrong here. And so what he was having a problem is that he was taking pictures, and he was saying that, that he was having a problem because in subframe selector, which is a process that allows you to look at the images and evaluate them, evaluate stars and evaluate other elements of the image, he kept getting that the noise values, one of the evaluations, was not a number, was an infinity. Basically, something was dividing by 0. So this is what one of his raw frames looks like. If I roll my cursor, again, this readout preview is very important. If I roll my cursor here on the screen, look at the values that I record in the dark areas. They're 0, absolutely 0, 0.000. That's not good. So cameras should not record for, if you're taking pictures of the light or just in general, should not record zeros anywhere. So I knew there was a problem, but I didn't know what it was. This was really weird. This is not a problem where this gentleman had subtracted something. This was literally the camera was giving him zeros somehow, but still also recording light. So what was up with that? Well, I also, of course, asked him to show me what a dark frame looks like. And if we do look at one of his darks, either of his darks, the entire dark is 0. And that's true for his other frame as well. Now, again, he didn't have a bias frame, but I'm sure it would have been 0 too. What apparently happened with this gentleman's camera is that they had changed the, oh boy, I forget what it's called, not the driver, but the software development kit, which I guess is related to the driver, but basically the software that controls the logic of the sensor and how the camera operates. And for whatever reason, that was broken, literally broken in such a way that some value was being subtracted from the data before it was downloaded to the computer. And it was a small number, because if you look at the flat is fine, or it's not fine. Something has been subtracted here, but you would never know it by looking at the flat. It's a very small number. The only reason we know it to be true is because the darks are 0, and the data has zeros in it. So there is some number that we could probably discover that it was being subtracted. And then once he contacted the company, they sent him a new version of whatever this software development kit is, or to update things. And then the camera, of course, worked well. But the thing is, he got so far down the road that he's trying to figure out why he's getting infinities with subframe selector. And my point is that in my fast track training, I specifically point out in steps 2 and 3 to not something that's often pointed out, but what to look for initially in the data. Who blinks through their dark frames, right? I do. Who looks that closely at what values are recorded in the darks and the biases? Once you start to appreciate what it is for your own detector and how that is related to, processes in PixInsight, it's very easy to identify early on if there's a problem. So you're not processing images and only find out 5 steps later that there is a problem. That's a source of frustration. It's a source of time that's spent that people don't, who wants to redo their work? I hate redoing things. That's what I'm trying to point out as part of this approach for beginners. It's not just the steps. There's more to it than just the steps. Let me continue and show yet another one here. This one is a really good one. This one I've demonstrated in a video, and it's actually on YouTube. I guess I should show that as well. I do make content available on my YouTube channel. So you can find me on YouTube, and there are some, call it free videos or whatever you want on here that you can take advantage of. Going back to here. And this one I did highlight in one, and I think it's just such a spectacular example. I'd like to spend some time on it. What I'd like to demonstrate is that I'm looking for my picture that I'm not seeing. Not this, not this, not this, not this. Where'd it go? I don't need it, but yeah, I'll just show you this. No, I will not show you that. I will show you this. So this image processor, and this is so common, where you'll get had this problem with what looked like the flat field image was either over or under correcting. And this is the look that you get. You can totally guess what's going on anytime you get this kind of look. This isn't because of some strange thing in her system or anything like that. This was literally this particular person had this issue. And the issue can be compensated for mathematically, but ultimately discovering what the issue is, well, that required looking again at those first 2 steps. So what I'd like to do is show that these are the images that you can see here. They've been calibrated. And all I'm going to do here is combine them together. I'd like to show you one, though, and this is another quick thing that many people don't know. You can, when you're in a process, you can also click on a file. I guess, no file, oh no. I might have moved them. Let me press this button, let me add them together. Oh, I guess I moved them. That was bad. Let me see, are these good? Oh, I'll have to figure out where the bad ones are. You can always click on a file and you'll get a picture. What I wanted to indicate, and I'm going to need to go find the files in the bad one here, so give me a moment to find that out. let me clear this and go figure it out. Hang on. Is that if you look at any single image, look at this. I have a good folder and a bad folder. Bad folder. Bad. Light. These should be the registered. Yes. So these are the calibrated and aligned images. Now I'll open one. There we go. What I want to show you is that if you look at any individual channel, image rather, when you're using a CMOS camera, when the exposures are very short, it's hard to see that there's a problem. It's only when you have integrated the images that suddenly, you can really see what in the world is going on. And so that is what I want to demonstrate here. And I'm going to close this. Only when you integrate everything, there it goes. You can't see the console unless I drag it over here. I may get choppy as it adds all these files up. So I'm going to show you this integrated result, which is going to look exactly like the one that I just showed you. I guess I feel like I have to prove it to you. There we go. Here's that result that we got. Now, what I would like to show you is what her dark frame looked like here. Here is her dark frame, and this time it looks like a perfectly reasonable frame. And again, because she's using a CMOS type detector, she didn't take biases. All she has are two darks, one dark to calibrate the lights, another dark to calibrate the flats. So this is the 3-minute dark frame, the 180-second dark frame for the light frames. And then she has some short exposure here for the flat dark. And they both look visually perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with them. But now you do the thing with your cool readout preview. You roll your cursor here, and you'll find that the shorter exposure says 0.011. And the longer exposure says 0.0036. That, when I first looked at her data, I said, that can't be right. If you have a shorter exposure, you would not expect the value to be a bigger value, for the electronics or whatever. It should be equal to or greater than, but not less than. Why is this 3-minute dark frame, why does it have a value that's much less than this shorter one? So the answer is that this particular camera is not as well behaved as you might want it ultimately to be. And this was an old dark. Now, how old was it? It was only 3 or 4 months old, as I recall. And so she took new darks. And then when she took new darks, I won't spend the time to add, to show you the integration. I will just show you. The result was this. I didn't change anything but the dark frame and integrated them together. It was just the dark frame. The flat dark, because that was a newer one, was perfectly fine. The light frames, because they were new, were perfectly fine. It was just the old dark. She had to update the dark frame. And again, if you had looked at these first steps here, and you examined those darks compared to each other, you would very easily have identified that. Of course, if you don't do that, then you spend a lot of time trying to figure out, is this a flat problem, DBE problem, all of that kind of stuff. It gets crazy.
Adam, you got a moment?
Yes.
This probably isn't exactly the subject you're talking about, but the question came up about how do you characterize your camera, and I think they're talking about a CMOS camera and adjusting offset and gain.
Yeah, that's not something I'm prepared to talk about. A good question, but not my area of expertise. I don't know is the short answer. I mean, I know, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's not my thing.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, that we'll have to save for another time. What I want to show you is this image. And a lot of the material that I get is from participating on, the PixInsight forum or on Facebook, which is where this one comes from. And this particular question was, hello all, I've run into a calibration integration twice, changed a few things. I can't seem to get rid of these weird artifacts. Never seen this problem before. Some of them are obvious, and so on and so forth. But that's not the problem here. So this image is has a very particular look, and I would argue that anyone that has ever done comet imagery, where you align on the comet and not the stars, for example, and then you use image integration, you're hoping that the stars reject, but they never do reject entirely. That's what this is a picture of. This is a picture, anytime you see this kind of faded view, it almost looks like the object is there, but depending upon the dithering and tracking and all kinds of other things, I can say, just by looking at this image, that this data was not aligned. And it's a half-rejected integrated result is what we're looking at. We're looking at the average of only things that were not basically rejected, which is not that much information. Now, there's an additional problem. He's worried about the centers of stars, but that's not the big problem here. The problem is the alignment. And that problem, as it turns out, is another one of these elements that you can quickly identify very early on. And I'd like to show you an example here. now let's be sure I have everything here before I say. I have this thing here, and I think I have this thing here. Let me be sure before I say anything. This is a different thing. I want the M13 stuff. Here it is. So there was a person that went, again, on the forum, and he was complaining that he couldn't align the images. And he didn't understand why they wouldn't align. There were plenty of stars. This is a globular star cluster. Why wouldn't his images align was the question. And I'd like to address that here. So let me show you what star align here. So this person that had this problem, he also came at it as many starting people do, with not having any darks, any flats, any calibration at all. He just had light images, raw images. That's it, which is going to exacerbate the particular problem that I'm going to demonstrate here. So let me show you what one of his raw images looks like. Here's one of the raw images here. And if we zoom in, you can kind of see, now this has been debayered, as you can see here. You can see there are stars, but it's not very bright. And this is another thing that happens with CMOS cameras, is that people take very short exposures, and that lends itself, there's a consequence, it lends itself to other problems. Now, I know there's a philosophy that many people propose, which is that, these cameras don't have a lot of noise, short exposures are fine, blah, blah, blah. But there's a consequence that they don't mention. And that consequence is there are other issues that become more important when your exposures are short. And here's one of them. These little things, you see the little blips right there? Let's see if I can find a brighter one here, maybe. They don't look like much here. This thing right there, that's a hot pixel. Now, it doesn't look like much, but to the star detecting routine, it's a big deal. The way that star alignment works is that it's looking for what it thinks are stars. And if you can see a little red one there. And if you have these things that look like stars, doesn't confuse it. It actually tries to match on those things. And that only happens because these little hot pixels are brighter than the stars in the image themselves. So it's not a surprise that this becomes an issue. If you had a brighter image, a longer exposure, then the stars would have been brighter than the hot pixels, not so much of a problem. So by virtue of the fact you have a short exposure, you're going to want to get rid of hot pixels. The proponents of the short exposure, take a short exposure, take a short exposure. They never say, now also take care of hot pixels. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate. I'm going to just press the go button here. I'm going to align those images. try to, using star alignment. And I want to show you the result because it is such an important result. When he posted, this person posted his question on the forum of circling what shows up here in the console. I'm filling time here once it aligns. There it is. You will see that it says star alignment succeeded. 5 images were aligned, 0 failed, right? But if you now go to the directory that I save these things in, which is TAIC, so I double click here. Well, let me get out the blink tool before I go double click anywhere. So now I'm going to blink those that were just created. Here they are. Now remember, the console said it was aligned. The console said it. PixInsight said they were aligned. They are not aligned. And they're not aligned because of the hot pixels. So now, if I remove this, I'm going to close this, I guess. And then now I have where I've gone through and I've used cosmetic correction is the process that gets rid of hot pixels. So you'll notice here in the file name now that it says CC for cosmetic correction, and then it's been debayered. That's all that's happened to this data. Now we will run it. And you're going to have to wait. While we're waiting, let me just say that I have one more scheduled thing, although I have 3 more backup things. So do I have, how am I doing on time? I'd like to know that before I continue.
I think you're doing fine, Adam. How much more time do you think you have?
Well, why don't you specify a number? How much more time do I have?
We like to keep our shows to a little more than an hour, not much more. And I take up the first 8 or 10 minutes of that. And
Right.
You know, it's just pretty informative stuff here you're doing. I
So
just
have
as
I
soon
been-
have you back in 6 months. But you know
Sure.
what? Nobody says we have to go to bed. It's COVID
So
time, and we can't go
it's-
anywhere tomorrow anyway. So you
I
could go. You could go for hours. It's
No,
just
no.
at some point the audience is going to go to sleep.
I
As
understand.
of right now, we've got you've kept your audience the whole time. You're at about 83 right now. That's where you've been most of the night. So
Okay.
you're doing fine.
So I've been an hour, is that correct?
Oh, you've been a little less than an hour, but the show's
Okay.
been an hour. So,
So
why
I'm
don't
on time.
I'll tell you what, Adam.
Yeah.
You know, just out of consideration of your needs and the fact that I love you as a presenter,
Okay.
I'll just invite you back for the other things you want to show off
I
for,
understand.
3-6 months from now. Okay.
If I'm not
Okay.
an hour, let me just do the one last thing, because that means I
Okay.
would be on time. So I'm
Yeah.
feeling pretty good about my timing.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Yep. This time it says the same answer here, that star alignment has succeeded, but now when we blink the result, we will see that it actually did succeed. Now I can I can do there are only 5 files here, so I can actually highlight them, or I can do my fancy star thing, doesn't matter. These are the ones that are aligned. You'll notice that they have the dash, the underscore R, so cosmetic correction, debayered, registered. So if I open up those, and now get this out of the way, zoom into here, get this out of the way, and blink, you will see that everything is aligned. Even though the stars are so dim and all of that, now that we've removed those hot pixels, even in this noisy data, the star alignment process can do its job. So I wanted to demonstrate that very much. The last thing I'll show for tonight is something about flats that I think is really very powerful. And what I need to do here is that it's a little confusing, because the thing I just demonstrated was a globular cluster. I believe that this image, it's not the same data. This is different data here. A person had another problem, and I want to show you what that problem was. So this person had, let's be sure that I see this. This is the raw flat. That's good. And then I should have a dark here. And then I have, that's right. This is the flat. Okay. The raw flat is the single exposure, and that's the multiple exposure. Got it. So this person had calibrated his data, and he wanted, let me show you the flat. He's got stuff, that he wants to make go away. So if I display this maybe with a little more contrast with the screen transfer function here, hopefully, this may look, by the way, this may look very weird because of the Bayer matrix, and I apologize if it comes across a little weird. But all you need to be able to see is that there are lots of dust donuts in this image. So what you hope to have happen is that when you apply the dark, it calibrates well here, and we end up with a good-looking image. Now, I'm going to use pixel math to do the job. I have named the dark frame dark, and I've named the flat field image flat, and I'm just going to calibrate the data with it. Instead of somehow using some calibration process, I'm just going to use pixel math. If you haven't seen it before, it's pretty easy to do. So M13 raw is the name of the thing. I'm going to take M13 raw, and I'm going to subtract the dark. That's step 1 of processing. Divide by the flat, that's step 2. Then you have to multiply times the average or median value of the flat, because that's going to give you get the proper light level back here. That should calibrate this image. I hope so. But what you'll notice, you zoom in, is that unfortunately, what he complained about is that, gosh, there's dust donuts here, and there's a dust donut there. It didn't seem to calibrate, but part of the dust donuts do calibrate, right? But not all the dust donuts do. Why? Why is that? How can you have some dust donuts calibrating and some that aren't? That is a puzzling question. So what I tried to figure out is I asked for, this person's data, and what he gave me were individual flat frames, but he didn't give me all of them. What he gave me was one raw flat, and then of course he gave me the master flat because I wanted to see what one of these raw frames look like. And what I'm about to demonstrate is a technique that you can use to determine if your flats are still viable, if they're still characterizing the system. Because this thing right here represents the master. It doesn't say master, but this is a master flat. Some people use their master flats for indefinite periods of time. That may or may not be a good idea, and you should check. Now, where'd my little raw one go? Here it is. What you can do is you can divide one of the images by the other. That's the trick. If you're single, because remember, this is a subflat. A single flat, all of his flats averaged together is what creates the master. So any single flat, with exception to some noise, should divide very well into the average flat, and we shouldn't see any differences. Let's see if that's true. So you can take the, I'm not typing, where am I? There we are. You take the raw flat, like this, and you divide by the master flat, divide by the master flat. I do want to make sure that I am scaling here. I believe I am. Yeah, let's rescale the result just in case. And is this going to create a new yeah, let's create a new image. And I'm going to argue that that is not that's not a uniform looking image, right? So there is a significant difference. There are differences. Now they're very small. These values are, they're small. The differences anyway between one thing and another. Let me see if it's hard to manipulate this display. Let me zoom out. There. And let's try. Yeah, this is going to be tough. There. I mean, you can still see, all the information is there, right? Sometimes what you'll notice is that there's if you look at just that calibrated image, I'm going to go back to it here. Not there. Sorry. That's by the way, this is the dark. I didn't even show you the dark. This is the dark I subtracted. You can see the amp glow here. So the dark is really doing its job, because otherwise you would have seen the amp glow. This one, there we go. Can you see, it's kind of hard to tell, but you can almost see down here that the dust donut is a little bit brighter on one side and darker on the other. It almost has an embossed look. That means that I'm going to guess what happened with this individual is that he combined two different sets of flats. They weren't all taken at the same time. Something had changed between the flats that he had taken in such a way that when he averaged them together, the average kind of calibrated some of it, but not all of it. And so you got this kind of weird result where some of the dust donuts were being calibrated. That's my guess anyway. And others were not being calibrated. But the point is you can divide the images and you can see if they're working. Now let me just demonstrate that this is truly a valuable thing to do. Here is one of my master flats. It's pretty terrible, right? And then I have a single flat that I took here. And so I should be able to do the same experiment. I just say typing. I say M what? M88 sub divided by M88 master. And it is my hope. Okay, fine. I should do this one. I've stretched this. I'm going to argue that that looks a little better. That's more uniform. You might be able to see something here, but that's definitely within the noise, right? So I can definitely tell that this, maybe if this was a new flat that I took, I can compare it to an older master. And if I still get a uniform answer here, I know that the new flat that I took is the same as the old master. So I'll just continue to use the old master. Once I start seeing changes here, that tells me, you know what, I've got to take a new flat master, because it's no longer matching what it used to be. And with that, I'm going to say that I'm on time, and I'll say that that was really what I wanted to demonstrate in this demonstration, because all of the things that I just did there, all of those darks and flats and everything else, that's the kind of stuff that's covered in here. That's what goes beyond these steps. It's the way in which you can identify these problems early on, and I give people those tools right in the beginning, which is why I'm calling this the fast track to image processing in PixInsight.
Okay, Eric, how are we doing on any questions? Any questions over there?
I do have a question. Wouldn't you recommend doing cosmetic correction on all your subs in any case?
I do. Yes, I do. But the important point that I was making is that, there's a little more to it, Eric, because sure, people can do it, but then they need to realize if they are getting rid of enough of them. And that still requires either examining the data or looking at the numbers that are in the console. Something else that people don't often pay attention to, that when you run the cosmetic correction process, it'll tell you how many pixels are being affected. And if you're not affecting, if you're affecting 100 pixels, that may not be enough. When you have 16 million or however many million pixels in your image. So that you're right, though, I do, but it goes a step beyond. You really need to evaluate if you're doing enough of it. There is something else that I didn't get a chance to point out here, but it's something that I think is extremely valuable. As part of the fast track philosophy, I take a different approach here. You'll see that I have WBPP here in calibrate only. That's a pretty big deal. I'm putting my foot down or my stick in the sand, or what, I don't know, whatever the expression is. And I'm saying this is the best way, especially for people that are just starting up. I'm using the script, but I'm only using it in a way that really allows you to keep track of all of this stuff. And that's, I think that's a really, I think it'll be effective for many people.
No, I agree completely. Running calibrate only really tells you whether your calibrations are accurate or not accurate before you go into integration.
And alignments, and yep, exactly.
Yep. Other than that, there have just been some very nice comments. I think you got everyone's attention, and they there's a bit of teaching going on, which I'm sure that's what you intended. Alex?
Yeah, I thought there was, it may have been the one you just asked about how you decide if your calibration is actually working. It was down towards the end someplace. No, I guess it wasn't. Oh, I hate it when somebody's asked a question and we didn't cover it. And then I get so busy looking to make sure we did that. You may have asked the question while I was checking to see if, in fact,
I think we did. I think we
Okay.
got there. It was mainly people paying attention rather than asking questions.
There's no question, but no question about that. Okay, one of the things I've noticed about Adam through the years, and believe me, I go to a lot of workshops and things, NEAC and AIC and various other places. Adam does a really good job of going back underneath the stuff, so that when you're, the concepts behind everything. I really appreciate that he can do that, because when you start understanding why you're doing something in the first place, you realize why the thing you're doing may not be working. All right. If you know that something's not working, that's one thing. But to realize what it's supposed to be doing in the first place, and then ask, is it doing that? Then you can start figuring out where you're going wrong. And that helps a lot. And Adam's excellent at pointing that kind of stuff out. Adam, you were not finished. You had lots more to say. And I know that there are people out there saying, Alex, let him go on and on and on and on. What I promise all of you is that I hear you. I know you need that stuff. I'm going to ask Adam to come back in a while and tell us more of this stuff. So often we get people that say, hey, look, this is how things work when you're doing everything well, and see how my results came out fine. Very rarely do we get somebody who will come along and say, hey, you guys want to go through some things that aren't working and figure out why they aren't working, and maybe some tricks I've learned to make things better. Adam did that today, and I really want to thank him for doing all that.
No problem. Thank you very much for, again, inviting me on the program. I got a kick out of, obviously, getting a chance to announce my latest and greatest thing. So I really appreciate that.
Adam, how does somebody get a hold of you when they need to talk to you about any of these things that you talked about today? Or
obviously through the website, there's a contact form that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. That gets sent right to my email.
Cool. We're going to be wrapping it up. I want to remind everybody that we've got another show next week, and then the week after that, we'll expect all of the YouTube or the Orion pictures to be in. So if you're going to be doing anything on the Orion time program, please get them in. Orion's right overhead right now, so please be taking those pictures. And I'll put them together in some kind of show, and we'll show them in a few weeks from a few weeks after February 7th. Also, if you have any ideas of your own about how you'd like to make a presentation for the Astro Imaging channel and all the buddies over here, great. Okay. But you do that. Volunteer to do that. We'll see you next week, and we'll go out to the observatory in West Texas, and we'll see how to shoot sprites with Steve Hummel. So see you next week. Molly, you ready to take it?
Yep, I will take us out momentarily.
Thank you.
Good night, all.